Hey, I'm Ewan, and today we are going to be changing this motocross tire on this Rabaconda dirt tire changer. Now, Rabaconda is relatively new to the market when it comes to tire changing solutions, and they offer the dirt changer, which we have here, as well as a street tire changer and a mini tire changer. It's a great addition to the garage, but more importantly, it's great for people who are looking to change tires on the go. This whole system collapses down into a carrying bag that you can take with you to something like the motocross track or the trailhead, and you'll be able to change tires with you as you move. So before we go ahead and start changing our tire, there are a few things that we need to talk about. First is you need to remove the wheel from your motorcycle. And if you've never done that before, we'll link a video for you so you can go ahead and watch it and figure out how to get it off the bike. Next, the tools we'll be using today mostly come entirely with the dirt tire changer kit. However, there are a few additional tools that we will link for you below to get this job done. So let's go ahead, get our old tire off and get our machine set up. Using the 3 included levers, we're able to easily adjust our machine between ranges of 16 to 21-inch wheels. Since we have a 21-inch front, I can simply loosen the levers, adjust to where I need, and then tighten them back down. Now the next step before removing our tire is to go ahead and loosen the rim lock so that the nut is all the way at the end of the thread without actually being off of it. After that, we're going to go ahead and remove our valve core to let our inner tube air down. People generally recommend leaving about 3 to 5 psi in the tube to prevent pinching. I've never actually measured it myself. I'll just remove the valve core, let it air down, and then reinstall it without compressing the tire so that the tube retains its shape within the tire. We're also going to want to go ahead and remove our valve stem nut so that the valve stem has some play within the rim. Now, with our rim lock, valve stem, and inner tube prepped, we're going to go ahead and use the bead breaker arm included on our Rabaconda to work our way around the wheel, break the first bead, and try to avoid the rim lock area because you won't be able to push down with the arm there. Once we've gotten the first bead off, we're going to flip the wheel around and do the exact same thing on the second side. When we go to remove this first bead, we need the area where the bead breaker arm meets the tire free of both the rim lock and valve stem, as well as the complete opposite side of the wheel. In the case of our wheel here, the rim lock and valve stem are next to each other. Even if our valve stem was opposite the rim lock, like in the case with some other wheels, our 90-degree rotation here still leaves both areas open. The next step is we are ready to remove the first bead of our tire. But as with any tire changing process, you want to heavily lubricate both sides of the tire before you do it. You can use bead grease, or in this case, I just have a mixture of dish soap and water in a spray bottle, and that'll work just fine. So now, with our tire properly lubed up, we're gonna go ahead and make sure our rim lock is at 90 degrees and start grabbing our tire irons. In the case of these Rabaconda irons, this curved end here is typically used for installing a tire, and the flatter end here is typically used for removing a tire. Now, whenever you are using tire irons with a tube, be sure to not go in too far and grab the tube, but just the sidewall of the tire. Using the bead breaker arm, I'm going to rest this one tire iron here and grab 2 more to then space them about 1/4 of the tire's width apart. And we're gonna leave these in place here and then use these to remove the first bead of the tire. So with our tire irons in place, I'm gonna walk to the opposite side of the wheel and use my knee to push the opposite side of the tire down. Now I'm simply going to grab my tire irons and use them to lift 1/4 of the tire up and over the rim. Now that we have 1/4 of our first bead removed, we are going to take this wheel and flip it over and place the section we removed right under the bead breaker arm. Using the section we removed, we are going to take our bead breaker arm and push the remainder of the first bead up and over the rim. Now, some of the time you can use the bead breaker arm and it'll get the whole first bead off. Sometimes it doesn't quite work all the way, and in that case, I'll just take the wheel and flip it over and finish the rest of the first bead with tire irons. Some of that has to do with the valve stem and the rim lock, and it's just one of these processes where you're constantly monitoring and adapting to make sure that you're doing things the way that you anticipate them to go. Now that we have our entire first bead removed from the rim, it's a good time to take your valve stem and push it up into the rim so that it's not locked into place in the hole there. Once the valve stem's in, we're gonna go ahead and remove the wheel, flip it over, and then start working on the second bead using the bead breaker arm again. We're gonna focus on the rim lock last, so I have it placed 180 degrees from the bead breaker arm. But with mention of the rim lock, if you see it's poked out in place right now, we're just gonna go ahead and push it in to give ourselves some space when pulling the tire off. This process is pretty simple. You're gonna use the arm to push the rest of the tire down off the rim and remove it. With the tire off, it's always good to inspect your rim strip and see if it needs replacing. I had one on hand just in case, but this one seems to be in pretty good shape. Let's go ahead and grab our new tire, which I've left out in the sun to get warm. So with our new tire and in our new tube, we want to grab our baby powder and line the entire inside of the tire with baby powder. We're then going to take the baby powder and put it all around the outside of our tube as well. This is going to help free up some friction within the tube and tire so that they can spin freely, and this will help when you go to install it on your rim. Now, every single time I've done this, it does make quite a large mess. So I'm going to be a gentleman and I'm going to put a towel down.
Baby, I'm in the mood. All I wanna do is hold you tight.
Now, with everything properly attended to, we need to take our outer valve stem nut off and our valve stem cap from our tube, and then we are going to get our tube inside of our tire. If you wanted to unfold the box shape of the tube just a bit, you can inflate the tube so that it retains a bit more of a round shape, somewhere around 3 to 5 PSI again. With our tube and our tire, we are now ready to start installing the new tire on the rim. And the first thing that we're going to do is check for the direction of travel on our tire and on our rim. Not all tires are directional, but in this case, this tire is directional. We know it's directional because there's an arrow pointing, so this wheel spins this way, the way I have it facing. And then we know the direction of travel of our rim because of the side that the brake rotor's on. I know the brake rotor's on the left side for a Kawasaki KX450, so I know that wheel spins that way. You're gonna use those two to make sure that you have them facing the right direction. From here, this is where things might get a little bit tricky, so just be patient and try not to get frustrated. But our first step will be getting our tire up and onto our rim and getting our first bead under the rim lock while simultaneously getting the valve stem through the valve stem hole and loosely installing the valve stem nut. Now, if you have one of the wheels where the valve stem is opposite the rim lock, you're not going to worry about the valve stem yet. You're going to go ahead and install the whole first bead and then use your hand to guide the valve stem in afterwards. So it'll make a bit more sense when we start showing you, but be patient. Pro tip, if you're struggling with the valve stem through the hole, use your knee to help out. Now, with our first bead under our rim lock here and our valve stem through our hole with the nut loosely attached, we are going to take our tire iron and start slowly working our way around the bottom bead to get it up and over the rim. It's important as you do this to keep an eye on your valve stem and make sure you're not pulling it in either direction, and just keep an eye on your tube to make sure it's out of the way. Now that we're installing, we're going to go ahead and use the curved end of our tire iron. So we have our first bead mounted. If you have any trouble and it feels like you're using too much effort to try to get the first bead on, take a look and make sure that your second bead is not getting seated under the rim. You only want the first bead in there, and if the second bead is going in place, you're not going to have enough space. Now that the first one's on, I'm taking a look at my valve stem and it looks nice and straight, so that looks good to me. But if I needed to move it around, the baby powder inside the tube in the tire will give me the freedom to do so. If you have the kind of wheel where the valve stem is opposite the rim lock, this would be the point where you would lift the tire up a bit and use your hands to sneak the valve stem through the hole and get the nut on. Now we are ready to get our second bead on and finish our tire installation. And this is going to be the pretty standard method of just using tire irons to work the bead around the rim. If you've never done that, there are a couple simple tips that I would suggest. One is don't reach the iron in too far and grab the tube. You just want to get the tire wall here. Secondly, take small bites. You're going to be tempted to jump large portions of the wheel, but I promise you if you just take small bites, it's going to be a lot easier. And what we're going to do to get our rim lock mounted is take a tire iron on one side of the rim lock and a tire iron on the other and push the rim lock up out of the way so that our bead is under the rim lock and we are good to start working our way around. Using your knee at the very end is also really helpful to push the tire down and give you a bit of space to work the last bit of tire up over the rim. Rabaconda does also have a nice little hook for your final tire iron where you can leave it placed in place and held ready to spoon the last part over while you work your way around, because it gets hard to wedge one in towards the end. Look at how beautiful this is. Our tire's on and we are ready to go rip again. But If you installed this tire and it was not facing the right direction and you had to rip it off and redo it, you would not be a happy camper. So double, triple check your rotation before you get it installed. From here, all we're gonna do is tighten down our valve stem nut and tighten down our rim lock, put some air in this tube, and we are ready to go rip. I think all in all, it's not an incredibly complex process, but the first time you do it, it can be a little tricky and it can be a little frustrating. So when you do go to try this out, I would budget at least an hour, take your time, do it right, don't pinch a tube, just make it a fun experience for yourself. Because after that, and you have some practice under your belt, I think you can confidently get a tire swapped in about 15 to 20 minutes. But if you have any further questions about this product, go ahead and click the link to our product detail page where you'll be able to read other customer reviews and read what other people are saying using the Rabaconda Dirt Changer. If you have any further questions, go ahead and give our customer service team a call. They're all riders just like you, and they'd be happy to help out with anything you need. Thanks for joining me in getting a tire mounted with this Rabaconda Dirt Tire Changer. I'm Ewan, and I'll see you out there.